It's time to talk NFL draft again on the Our Football Network. And it seemed just like yesterday. We were talking to Zack Kelberman, Mile High Huddle, and it's already time to talk about not only the draft, Zack, but kind of put a closing deal on the offseason. Most of the big moves are done. It's really on to the future of this offseason, which everybody can't wait for, and that's training camp.
I want to say thank you for having me on again, Greg. It's always nice to join your show and be take part of your platform. I want to give you a little spoiler alert.
Oh.
I was a big fan the first time I talked to you about Russell Wilson, the Broncos offseason. I wasn't that high on the Broncos draft class. Looking back, I've had time to resign myself to it, but they went in a couple directions, especially in the second and third round, that I wasn't wild about. So we'll be sure to get into that today.
It's really funny you said that, because I've been doing now these reviews. I think I've done 80, most of them. I think I only have a couple left. I'm doing another one with the Chiefs tonight, and I think that's it. So I'm pretty much done. And out of all of them I've done so far, this was going to be the first one that I was saying to myself, wait, how am I going to break this to Zack that I don't really like this draft? Everybody else, I was like, for the most part, I may not have agreed with this, but in total, I like the picks, and I'm not gonna just say I like it just to say I like it, and obviously you're the same way, but yeah, because one of the things too is that with all the picks, 9 picks, right? With all the picks, there were only 2 in the first 3 rounds, and 3 in the first 4. But still, you would have expected to have come up with some. I mean, you take a look at some of the guys that they drafted: Turner Yell and Montreal Washington and Luke Wattenberg and Hannesgen. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And Hicks. I never heard of these guys.
Right.
And our lads either had most of them graded a round or 2 later, and 3 guys that they didn't even have as draftable grades at all. So now I'm not saying that's a wash, because Benito and Dulcich look like they could be pretty good players, but I just wanted to let you know I agree with you.
Well, I'm about to lose some of my followers en masse because I want to say I actually really enjoyed Kansas City's draft class, Greg. They came away with McDuffie and Karlaftis and Sky Moore. Those are all instant impact players. So big fan of what Brett Veach is doing. Listen, when you're I'm putting myself in George Payton's shoes, the Broncos GM, you built a win now roster. You won the offseason, you won free agency, you got the quarterback. There were just little cherries you wanted to add on top of the sundae. And it was like this draft didn't matter for them. They were all about taking flyers. It's all about developmental picks for the future. It's a good position for Payton to be in. But I kind of like the back end of that draft a lot better than the front end for what it was. Obviously, when your first pick doesn't come until 64, you're kind of hamstrung. But did that first pick have to be an edge rusher when you gave Randy Gregory $70 million, when you have Bradley Chubb on the 5th-year option, you have a couple young players you're high on? Did you need to go edge at that spot? Was it just a luxury pick? I don't like luxury picks. I don't believe in drafting for need, but it should be the best player available. And if that's their BPA, so be it. But then the 3rd round, they turn around and take a tight end. When you have Alberto, when you brought in a blocking tight end, Eric Tomlinson, and you're going to bring back Eric Sauber, which they did you have to take a tight end there? When your receiver room is that stacked, which it is, and Russell Wilson has more weapons than he knows what to do with already, did you have to take a tight end? You mentioned Montreal Washington. That's probably, and make of this what you will, one of my favorite picks of this draft class. He's an instant impact player. He helps a position of need, which is special teams. He's going to be a dynamic player on offense, hopefully. But when that's your best pick, or the 4th-round corner, Damari Mathis or Wuzurike, the defensive lineman, I can't give the draft an A, put it that way. It was like a C+, B- to me.
Just from what you're saying, it leads me to believe that maybe Payton went into this going with best available player, that I wasn't going to draft for need. That, look, we might have had a couple of edge rushers. We might have paid Gregory all this money, but Benito's the top guy on our board. Yep. I'm not reaching for another guy. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I'm just guessing. Maybe that's the case. But like you said, it did look like it was a draft filled with developmental players and special teams players. And that usually does come with a team, especially when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson, that you would figure is, hey, we're set. We're ready to hit the Super Bowl. And now let's kind of balance our rest of our roster out.
I mean, here's my thing, though, Greg, and Broncos fans know this and they agree with me. They haven't made a first-round selection of a right tackle or a premium selection of a right tackle in literal years. And right now they have a competition going on between Billy Turner, Tom Compton, and Calvin Anderson. And y'all out there are going, who, and who? Because who are they? So I would have rather, you're good at edge rusher, you were good at tight end. Was it worth it foregoing a premium right tackle, Charles Cross, let's say, who they passed on to take Benito? Is it worth it? I don't think, it's one thing to draft for need and be in a luxury position, but you have to address the situation on offense where you have your quarterback and you made that effort and you made that blockbuster trade, but then you're going to turn around and ignore right tackle to add another edge rusher. It seemed a little inconsistent based on what Peyton did this offseason.
All right, so when you were sitting there at the draft, as it was going on for those first couple of picks, let's say round 2 and round 3, as fans, we always kind of, cross off players that are on our wish list and that kind of thing. And here's 3 or 4 guys. We're coming up. It's pick 32 in round 2 was the first pick.
It was 64. So yeah,
64.
Yeah.
Who was on the board at that point when Benito's name was called? Give me a player or two that was available just before the name was called that you were hoping that they could have picked.
Charles Cross, I believe, was there, the tackle, who I really liked. I think Chad Muma, the linebacker from Wyoming, was there, who the Broncos, again, he talked about right tackle, but inside linebacker, they're starting Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton. Who, once again. So they passed on 2 premium players, blue chippers, as far as I'm concerned, to take an edge rusher and a tight end.
Well, Cross actually was not on the board at the time. He was off the board, Cross.
At 64.
About somebody else. Must be thinking about another tackle.
There was another tackle. I mean, any of the premium 3 or 4 or 5 tackles on the board, they all bypassed.
Sure. Yeah.
I believe maybe the pick that Seattle got in the Russell Wilson trade was
Charles Cross.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you got that. That's why it confused you in your head that here, this is the player that went to Seattle. But hey, obviously you guys got Russell Wilson. You're not going to give that back. But it was a deep class. There were a lot of tackles that were available in the 2nd and 3rd round. So I hear exactly what you're saying. And just looking at it right now, I'm not exactly sure. And here's another guy that Seattle got, and I forget exactly where they drafted him, but they picked up the kid Abraham Lucas.
That's who I was thinking of. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that's where the confusion came.
Lucas,
Seattle
yes.
Cross, Wilson pick Lucas. Yes.
Yes.
Lucas was the guy. So yeah, so there was players like that were available. I hear what you're saying. Okay, let's get let's kind of go over this. So, all right. So Benito, all right, Benito's like I said too. Sometimes you as a fan or an analyst, you can criticize at the time, but now the draft's over. The way I do it is I look at the picks and okay, draft is over. Whatever they did, I could have disagreed with it, but now let's see what kind of players they got. And Benito's a good player, so good prospect, good pass rush ability. So what do you think about how he's going to fit with the team? And you've seen him on tape. Are you happy that he's on board? And look, to have Chubb, Gregory, and Benito now, I mean, maybe that's going to help their pass rush immensely.
That's the plan. And I said at the day of the draft, I did a video hit. I said at 64, he might not be a first-round pick, but as a second-round pick, he better contribute right away, whatever role he's given, situationally or a full-time role. He's not ready to be a full-time starter, Greg. He's kind of bad against the run. He needs to add more mass to his lower body.
Yep.
But he's a good pass rusher in tandem, though. And here I'll make a very Broncos-specific analogy. I hope he's more Shaquille Barrett than Shane Ray. Shane Ray was the first-round edge rusher the Broncos drafted in 2015, and he never panned out. He was one of the bigger busts in Broncos memory, and a lot of Broncos fans got PTSD from the Benito pick. I think he will help, and I think as a backup, great player to have. And to the Broncos' credit, it worked out. Hindsight is always 20/20. They lost in OTAs a outside linebacker and a reserve guy, Jonathan Cooper, to a finger injury. So more snaps for Nick Benito. It'll help them at that area. I don't hate the player. I guess I hate the draft the slot where he was taken, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm sure. I'm not sure if I asked this to you because it wasn't on our plate last time. But Shaquille Barrett, how disappointing was it for fans that the franchise did not lock this guy up?
It's very disappointing. A lot of fans saw what the Broncos didn't see, and that Shaq Barrett was so much better than Shane Ray. But the Broncos chose Shane Ray. They had Von Miller at the time. They had DeMarcus Ware at the time. They had plenty of edge rushers, and they had to make a final call down to the last two. And I was, and plenty others were pounding the table. They all saw what Shaq could do as a pass rusher, and they saw that Shane wasn't cutting it. But Greg, that's the problem with draft pedigree, is that if you're a first round pick or even a second round pick, you're going to get more chances and more opportunities based on that alone.
Yeah, matter of fact, as a Jet fan, that's one of the things that I was saying for about a year and a half. I don't care what you do. Denver doesn't want this guy. You can see they don't want this guy. They're not locking him up long term. Make a trade. Make a trade with Denver to get this kid. And of course, the Jets, being the Jets, didn't. They have a new regime now, which I'm very happy about.
They had a hell of a draft, though.
Yeah, I was very pleased with that. And as long as Wilson now lives up to his billing, finally, my team's headed in the right direction. But okay, so let's stick on defense, and because there were a lot of defensive picks here. So Mathis was the next guy, the corner out of Pitt. Seems to be a physical corner, which is nice. Has good ball skills. Not overly tall or lengthy, but decent enough speed. What did they like about him?
The fact that, just as you mentioned, he's a really ideal fit in the system that Ejiro Evero, the Broncos' new DC, wants to run. And he was the Rams secondary coach last year, so he had a lot of influence into the Mathis pick. He recommended him to George Paton. George Paton took his recommendation and made him a Bronco. Damari Mathis and the lineman they took in the fourth round, Awuzurike, were my favorite picks of this draft class. Mathis is going to be, I hate to say it, a big year one contributor, because if you look at the Broncos cornerback room, they have Patrick Surtain, who's going to be an all-pro, but Ronald Darby is injury prone, Michael Ojemudia is injury prone, Aseng Bassi is injury prone, K'Wan Williams, the slot corner who they signed, is injury prone. He will get on the field, Mathis, in year one, and he will make a big impact. Also on special teams, where they lacked last year. What I like about him, he's feisty, he's scrappy. If you need him, he can play inside or outside, though I think he's a better perimeter corner. I really like this pick a lot. I do.
Okay. Let's stick with the secondary then and talk about Turner Yell. So second team Big 12, has 3 years of starting experience, even though he's been banged up quite a bit over those 3 years. Doesn't have the ideal size you're looking for. Maybe are we looking at another special teams player with developmental kind of, knocked in there, that's what we got here?
I think you're looking at a practice squad player in year one. If anyone screamed practice squad, it's Turner Yell. I understand they liked his experience in college, but they have a safety room, Greg, as you know, led by Justin Simmons. They brought back Kareem Jackson. They have a second-year guy who I'm very high on in Caden Stearns. They have another second-year guy in Jamar Johnson, who I like a lot. They have P.J. Locke, who's making plays in OTA so far. How many safeties do you need to keep? Not many, maybe 4 total. So Turner Yell, a nice project for Evero, project for the coaching staff, but practice squad guy as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, and then the other corner is it Faion Hicks?
Faion Hicks, yeah.
Okay, the kid from Wisconsin. The only thing I really noticed out of Hicks, and I watch a lot of Big Ten football, never noticed him. He's played a lot of games, and he ran a 4.37 on his pro day. Special teams player?
Yeah, Al Davis would like him for sure, considering the 40 that he runs. But I just don't see where he's going to fit in that cornerback room we just talked about. I mean, they have a bunch of bodies. They have a lot of veteran players and young players they like already. So Hicks is a dart throw, as were many George Paton picks in this draft class. They're just flyers. If they work out, great. If not, he was a 7th-round pick, and see you later.
All right. Now let's talk about your boy from Iowa State, a 4-year starter, first team Big 12 this past year. Very versatile, can line up pretty much as a 5-tech, as a nose tackle. Our lads actually said in the guide he should fit best as an oversized 5-tech. Is that where he's going to play eventually, do you believe?
I think so, because they never really replaced the Broncos did Shelby Harris in the Russell Wilson trade. And I think Ideally, I think he's better on the interior, but at 5 tech, on the inside, at nose guard, he can play anywhere, and the Broncos are going to get a lot of use out of him in year one. And what was a position of weakness, suddenly with Wuzurike and they added DJ Jones in the offseason, that has become positions of strength on the Denver defensive line. No one's going to know his name in year one, Greg, or very few, but I think by year two, year three, he will become more of a household name around the NFL, what he does in the trenches.
Okay, and we're done on defense with the last pick, another interior lineman, Henningsen from Wisconsin. So this is actually a former walk-on. He walked on at Wisconsin, and I this is probably, I gotta say, I don't know, maybe good competition for this, but I don't understand this pick.
He's already injured, so
He is already injured.
Yes, he's already missing time in OTAs. He was more of a thinking man's player. I forget the character of the movie that he was compared to, the actor. I think it was a Matt Damon or Ben Affleck movie, but this is a player who in a few years, Greg, will likely be a coach. He doesn't have much of a future on the gridiron, but he's a very intelligent player. I think he can serve a team well with his smarts. So I'm not counting on much from Matt Henningsen.
All right, now
Sorry, Matt.
I tell you what. Before we go over the offensive picks, since we're still on defense, I want to bring up two guys that I thought were the most notable rookies that were signed after the draft. Christopher Allen, yes, who actually had a 5th round grade. To see if this guy got picked by Denver in the draft, nobody would have said anything. But they got lucky and they were able to get this guy after the draft.
If it wasn't for his broken foot, I think it was, he would have been maybe even a 2nd, 3rd round pick. What he did at Alabama was incredible. He's versatile. He gets after the quarterback. He's good against the run. You mentioned, I don't know, we were talking about UDFAs. This might be my favorite player of all of them, including Mathis and Awuzurike. To get Christopher Allen as a UDFA, man, that's a dark horse, maybe even not a dark horse to make the 53. I think he has a pretty good shot if he can get healthy.
Yeah, and that's it. Getting healthy, that's all it is. If he could stay healthy, hey, you didn't have to invest a draft pick in him either. And then the other kid was Jaquan Mcmillan, the kid out of East Carolina. Now, I really liked, especially this year, as somebody that follows college football a lot, handicaps college football, I was all over the East Carolina season and getting to a bowl, and I thought it was tremendous. He was a big part of that. He's not, size is not ideal, especially when he's a 5'9", 177 player playing the outside. But second team All-American last year, 12 career interceptions and a touchdown, and he led the nation with 20 pass defense last season. So our lads didn't even really grade this guy well at all. I'm sure the size has a lot to do with it. Maybe he also didn't run a good 40 time, but the kid was just a playmaker.
He's not going to play outside in the NFL. He's going to move inside, and he's going to play the slot. And this is, I think we're on the same wavelength today, Greg, because if there's 2 UDFAs, I'll add one more in a second, that could make the Broncos 53. It was Chris Allen, and I said this the day he was picked up, and Jaquan Mcmillan, who, like you said, has a nose for the ball. I think he graded out, according to Pro Football Focus, with the best coverage grade of any cornerback in the nation last year. What another steal for the Broncos secondary. And we talked about them, that they have a surplus of cornerbacks, but the guy they moved on from, the nickel, was Bryce Callahan. The guy they picked up to replace Callahan was K'Wan Williams. The problem with Williams is just as talented as Callahan, but just as injury prone as well. And if he goes down, Mcmillan makes the roster. That's a shoe into a significant role, and I think he'd run with it. Great guy.
Okay. And by the way, was that last player on defense or offense?
Offense.
All right. So let's turn our attention now to offense as far as the draft. We'll start with Dulcich, the kid from UCLA. Again, whether this is the right pick or not, the fact is he was one of the best receiving options coming out at the tight end position in this year's draft. I mean, he had an 18.2 yards per catch average over the last 2 years, led the Bruins in receiving yards the last 2 years. I mean, he's a raw athlete, big play type of guy. Those numbers are very rare for the tight end position. So does this tell us that they're not as confident in Alberto as well?
What else could you take from it? I mean, really, you traded away Noah Fant and kept Alberto because I thought, and a lot of Broncos media and fans thought, that they were going to make him a central piece. They're going to make him the tight end one, no doubt about it. But then you turn around and use the 3rd round pick on Greg Dulcich, who some believe can be the next George Kittle. I don't go as far just yet. I think he has a bit to prove in the NFL before we give him that lofty comparison. But my thing, Greg, I'm not a Dulcich hater, though I'm not crazy about the hair either. I'm not falling into the hair craze from Greg Dulcich. There's only one ball to go around.
Sure.
There's so many mouths to feed on offense, and you have at least 4 great receivers. You already had a good tight end. You brought back another one. Did you really need to take another there? Did you really need to add Greg Dulcich to that room? Was he a necessary evil in the third round? That's what I question.
Yeah, that's why, maybe they're not as high on Alberto.
I guess.
And then the team's going to run the ball a lot. They're going to get Javonte Williams to get the ball in his hands a ton. They got to give the ball to Melvin Gordon a little too. So you're right. Okay. Later on down the road there, 5th round, we mentioned Washington. So I think most people probably say, okay, yeah, this kid probably has what it takes to be a really good kick returner, even in the NFL. But you were saying that you actually believed he could be more than that.
A couple years ago, the Broncos took Isaiah McKenzie, who now plays for the Buffalo Bills, and they had no idea, their previous coaching staff, what to do with him. And when they took Montreal, my tweet was, they're gonna do with him what they couldn't or never did with Isaiah McKenzie. I'm not gonna say he's gonna become like a Tavon Austin on offense or this star gadget player, but at least the threat of his speed on the field. You get him on the field, defenses have to account for him. And except for KJ Hamler, the Broncos have no one on offense with those set of wheels with that speed. So even just as a decoy to run a fake jet sweep or just to be out in the formation, I think he can get some due. But knowing Nathaniel Hackett, he's going to draw up at least a package of plays for Montreal, Washington. And from there, you get the ball in his hands, anything can happen.
All right, and then the last pick is center Luke Wattenberg, a 5-year starter from Washington. And our lads believes this kid is basically a draft and stash talent.
Yeah.
Do you and when you got Cushenberry and then Miners behind him, I mean, yeah, I guess is that pretty much what he's going to become?
Listen, the Broncos' offensive line right now is clear as mud. Honestly, we only know that Garrett Bowles is left tackle and probably Billy Turner's right tackle, but left guard's up for grabs with Dalton Reisner, center with Cushenberry. We know right guard more than likely will be Quinn Miners. So where is Cushenberry going to play? Is he going to play? Where is Wattenberg going to play? Yeah, as a late round pick, he's a stash guy. I think the center is going to be either Cushenberry or Graham Glasgow, who they brought back. I would prefer a tackle. That's a whole other story, though.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that you believe Miners. Is that your feeling, or is that where Denver? Is that what you've seen? That Miners at this point right now is the number 1 guy at right guard.
Well, he looked really good as a rookie at right guard.
Sure.
And then Nathaniel Hackett kind of slipped up earlier this offseason and said he's going to be, I'm quoting verbatim, he's going to be a really good right guard for us. So I'm just going from what Hackett said, and I'm assuming they leave him there, and they have a battle at center between Cushenberry and Glasgow.
Okay, so Glasgow you think is going to compete with Cushenberry for the starting center position. Got it. Okay. And Compton actually played pretty well last year for the first time in his career with San Francisco. Where do you think he does fit in? As is he going to compete for one of the spots?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. He followed his line coach Butch Berry over to Denver, who's the new Broncos OL coach. So yeah, he's going to compete for right tackle. They have a 3-way competition right now between Billy Turner, who's the favorite because he followed Nathaniel Hackett over from Green Bay. They have Tom Compton and also Calvin Anderson, the guy they've had for a couple years, who they've worked through the system. And 3-way battle, may the best man win. But I think Turner has the inside edge, and Compton will be key depth at tackle and guard.
I mean, the good thing is that there's depth. The question is it good enough depth that the guys who win the jobs are capable? So it's possible. I mean, I've seen worse offensive lines before. So just a matter of whether or not, may the best man win deal. Actually, those guys that win the job know what they're doing. Okay. Who's that last player that was signed, the one on offense that we need to keep an eye on, the rookie?
Well, there's two. There's one on defense. I forgot to mention. Inside linebacker Malga from USC. He's
Okay.
catching the coach's eye, and also on offense, a guy who's already made plays in OTAs, caught a long Russell Wilson touchdown bomb. Is Jalen Virgil, the former App State wide receiver. The dude is a speed freak, and if you can tell, Greg, I love speedy
Yeah.
receivers. I love fast weapons, and he is just that. I don't know, because you have Montreal, you have KJ Hamler. That receiver room is so stacked if he's going to make the 53. But Virgil, for me, would be a practice squad guy who I want to keep around. You can't teach speed, and he has it in spades.
Uh, I also wanted to, since I have you, and we're not going to talk again until it might not even be until camp begins. So if that's the case, linebacker is another position that, I mean, I got notes all over the place as far as who's fitting where, and I'm not, obviously it looked like now we know the outside edge rush guys are, but
Yeah.
as far as are they any chance they bring back Alexander Johnson?
A lot of Broncos fans want that. He played at a pretty high level for them last year. He graded out at the time of his injury, I think, as the third highest graded linebacker according to Pro Football Focus. I don't see it happening though.
Okay.
They have Kenny Young out there too, who played for him last year, and they haven't brought him back. It seems like they wanted two veteran linebackers, and those two guys they signed were Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton, and they have Jonas Griffith. In Evero's system, Greg, he doesn't really prioritize inside linebacker. A lot of sub packages, a lot of 5-1-5 packages. You might not see a lot of inside linebacker usage. So I think the ship has sailed for AJ. And there's also a reason why he's still unsigned. You have to wonder, is his injury recovery going slowly? Does he not? Do NFL teams not see a future?
Yeah. By the way, how does Browning fit in?
Oh, don't even get me started on Baron Browning. They are moving him to outside linebacker, I think on a full-time basis after playing inside last year, and I thought he thrived inside. And like we just mentioned, when you have Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton as your starters versus Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory, I'm putting Browning in the former group. I'm putting Browning in the first group. But they want to move him to edge. They can't have too many edge rushers, they say. They want waves and waves and waves. We'll see how it goes. I want to make one more Broncos-centric comment, Greg. They tried this experiment in 2017, a guy they drafted by the name of DeMarcus Walker. They drafted him to be a 5-tech defensive end.
I remember him. Yes.
From FSU.
Yes.
And they converted him to outside linebacker, and it stunted his career. He was never the same. And we just worry if they're doing the same thing to Baron Browning. That's all.
I remember that. I remember the poor kid had to gain all this weight.
Yes.
To play a position. I was like, why is he moving to that position when he was so dominant at Florida State at the other position? I just couldn't figure. And then it was, all right, well, lose the weight again. And he just got signed by who? Tennessee, maybe? I think Tennessee might have just signed him.
Did he? Good for him.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So I was actually going to ask you, the last thing I was going to ask you was about players to keep an eye on that could make a jump. You mentioned one of them, Caden Stearns.
Yeah, Caden Stearns for sure at safety, but is he going to get the opportunity, Greg? That's what I wonder. You have a locked-in All-Pro in Simmons. They brought back Kareem Jackson, who the locker room and the coaching staff loves. I don't know if Simmons can get on the field. A breakout candidate, honestly, it might seem obvious, but Jerry Jeudy on offense. He's done nothing.
I know, he's on my dynasty team, so I'm waiting.
Since being a first-round pick, he's really gone through the gauntlet.
Well, he's got the quarterback now. So.
Exactly. But he had the arrest, and he has the drop. So he has to clean up a lot of his own problems, too. But if he can get it together, no one really remembers him, Greg, in that draft class that had CeeDee Lamb and, of course, Henry Ruggs, Jefferson. Jerry Jeudy's the afterthought. Well, it's up to him to make that leap where he's not an afterthought and he's back in that conversation. So that's definitely and also Draymond Jones on the defensive line, defensive end. This is to me, a Pro Bowl caliber guy. Wasn't really used right in the Vic Fangio scheme. I think he'll be used correctly now. I could see a 10-sack season for Draymond Jones.
Okay. And who is the primary kick returner? Is it going to be the rookie?
Montreux. Yeah.
Okay. And also the backup quarterback. Is it going to be a battle between Johnson and Rippon?
It might as well be you, Greg, because
I know Russell Wilson. I mean, he doesn't get hurt. I know,
except for last year. But I mean,
it better not be. It's better not start. A new trend.
No, I'm not. I'm knocking wood right now, actually. But no, I mean, I more so meant that in the fact that if it's Josh Johnson or Brett Rippon or Greg DePalma, what does it really matter? It's like they need a better backup as far as I'm concerned. I would have drafted one you know, in the 6th round or whatever, a flyer, a UDFA. They didn't want to go there. So yeah, it's more than likely going to be Josh Johnson, the veteran.
Yeah, I thought so. Because Josh
But
Johnson actually played pretty well, which was strange. I couldn't believe how well he played when he had to play for the Jets for a little bit. I was like, whoa. And then
you poor
went,
man.
And then he went to Baltimore, I think.
Yeah.
So
Could
yeah.
do worse, I guess. I mean, better than having Joe Flacco or Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, Case Keenum, Paxton Lynch. I can keep going down the list. Life has been worse in the past.
I guess so. But hey, when you have Russell Wilson, you hopefully don't have to worry about that. So, all right. So Zach, you have a show that can be heard and seen on YouTube, correct?
Yes, sir. On the Mile High Huddle channel on YouTube, we stream live every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday night, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 8 o'clock Eastern. If y'all want to tune in, we would appreciate that. So
Zach,
check it out.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'll talk to you again during camp, preseason, you know, when we're trying to get the season underway, and can't wait for that conversation.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Greg.
Take care, Zach.